So, good evening, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here and spending a bit of time with me to talk about fatigue, because I think that this is something that that women, well, I think everybody experiences at various points, but the women can quite often just push and push and push themselves until they are depleted and exhausted, and then find it quite hard to look after themselves and get back to normal again. So sharing your pearls of wisdom, I think, will be really useful. So thank you for joining me for this. I wonder if you could start off though by, you and I know each other from online. We met online. We've never met in person. So I know a little bit about your story, but I'd love it if you could share a little bit about what you do and how it is that you started doing it.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Leslie. So in my former life, I used to be cabin crew for British Airways.
Wow.
Before that, I actually worked for Air UK, but I wanted to do the long haul. But I also wanted 4 children. So having 4 children combined with flying long haul, it got to the point where it was impossible because child number 3 basically stopped eating. So we were living in Dubai, and I had like a live-in helper, and I would have to go on my trip somewhere. So I'd fly back to London, do my trip, fly back to Dubai, and I was doing that for a few months. And it got to the point where I'd get back and child number 3 hadn't eaten for a week or had lived on biscuits and was getting really sick. And I thought, I just can't let this happen. And I wanted 4th child. And I thought, well, I have to change my whole career. I have to help my child. And then if I can help my child, then I will be able to help others. So that's where kind of the journey to nutrition started. And living in Dubai, it was really hard to find a course because they were all taught in Arabic. So I had to find something based in the UK, and I had to fly back, courses. But it was the passion to help my child, basically, because for a mum, that is, everything. And I started seeing all the experts that visited Dubai. I met Patrick Holford, I met Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, who developed the GAPS diet.
Oh, yeah.
So I just was hunting out all the experts, but it just wasn't enough, and I wanted to find the answers for myself. And when I started finding the answers, I realized how powerful nutrition could be. So that was the start of things for me. In terms of fatigue, I think it's something that I learned about from flying and jet lag. And shift workers have a lot of problems just managing blood sugar, and they're prone to weight gain because of unsocial hours and eating where you can and not having time to prepare meals. So that was the start of just generally noticing fatigue, and then having 4 children, all the sleepless nights. And in Dubai, I was lucky enough to have a help, in the house. So my husband would go off to work, and I did have some help. Someone to help me with the children. Someone helped me if I needed to have a rest. I had that support. Someone who helped me cook, who helped me with everything. And it was only coming back to the UK, and that support was just gone. And yet my husband was still working away. The fatigue, the tiredness turned into fatigue. Because not only was I not getting sleep, I didn't have the help, I couldn't always do the things I wanted to do to relax because I didn't have anyone to babysit. I started then developing anemia, B12 deficiency, because that's what happens long term. So as a woman, it's not just one thing, it's often just a multitude of things that are coming at you.
And that level of stress on your body, that exhaustion as well, can really disrupt your levels of estrogen and progesterone as well, can't it? So, and that then disrupts your cycle, and then you're again kind of.
It becomes a vicious circle. One thing, it's like a domino effect, really. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, and it's very hard once you get to a certain level, tiredness, to get yourself out of that. You know,
Yeah.
tiredness is basically when, if you go to bed and have a sleep, you get up and you're fine.
Yeah.
It's something you get extra rest. You maybe change your diet and lifestyle a little bit, and if you're fine. But if it's still there after making some of those changes, like just prioritizing sleep and changing diet and lifestyle, that's where you need to kind of think, oh, something else is going on here.
Yeah.
Worth looking into it.
Yeah. That was a kind of one of the first questions I wanted us to cover, and which you started to answer there, is like, what is the difference between just being plain old overtired, really stressed, and fatigue? Because I think you can probably confuse them easily.
Yes,
That,
that's right. And also fatigue is not just feeling tired.
yeah.
Fatigue can come in different forms. It can come in peaks and troughs, and it can also come in like something like brain fog. You know, it can be you can barely get up the stairs and you haven't even done any exercise. It comes at you in different ways. You can't maybe concentrate or focus. So there's a lot of different symptoms that accompany, you know, just that feeling of tiredness.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really interesting distinction to make. So that fatigue you can be really overtired, and you can but you can sometimes you can be okay and functioning, and sometimes you can have these real dips, and that, like, that bit of brain fog, that inability to concentrate, and then actually making exercises really hard.
Yeah.
Now that overlaps quite a bit with perimenopausal symptoms as well.
You're right, and I think it's interesting. I think women are kind of running on empty for quite a number of years, and I think by the time, if you're already running on empty and then you enter those perimenopausal years,
Yeah.
that's really like a breaking point for a lot of women. I think so they just run out of steam.
Yeah, I'm making notes here so that I can share this in the group. But yeah, so running on empty before you get into perimenopause could be really kind of
I guess it could be quite traumatic, you know, for some people. It depends on your reserves of what, you know, how depleted are you in nutrients. Yeah, what is going on in your life at that time when you enter perimenopause? How are your levels? Are you happy in your job? There's just so many factors that can kind of, you know, take you down one path or another.
Yeah. And so knowing that you've kind of got that inbuilt resilience before you hit those perimenopausal years can be really important.
It's taking care of that.
So one of the things about fatigue, so you mentioned about kind of anemia and B12 deficiency. I can remember when I was kind of touching on kind of fatigue, kind of wasn't quite sure where I got to sort of about 6 or 7 years ago, and without basically no sleep. And actually I wasn't initially, it was reading one of Patrick Holford's books, I think, and I started taking like a B complex vitamin, getting outside every day. And thinking about iron in my diet rather than a supplement. And it did definitely seem like, from what I was reading, seemed to be like a good recipe. Would you generally test people, get a test done before supplementing? Or
I mean, B vitamins, you know, they are used for energy, and the way you know, food manufacturing has changed, and a lot of products are kind of stripped of all the B vitamins. So it's quite a common deficiency. But I wouldn't kind of just focus on B vitamins per se. I would look at the whole story from one, and you know, take an overall picture really, rather than just focusing on one nutrient. But yeah, B vitamins. I'm taking one myself at the moment, actually, just because I've noticed I'm finding it really hard to find the energy to exercise, and that is just down to pure workload at the moment, and various things going on in my life. So I have actually chosen to take Viva for myself, and I can feel the difference within a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yes, I'm definitely the same.
Yeah, and the thing is, with a lot of vitamins, you know, when you're eating, you think you're eating a balanced diet, but also what you need to remember is you need to absorb the nutrients that you're taking in. And if you're under a lot of stress, then your gut will not be in the best state to absorb the nutrients. And that's, again, another problem that I had. I was so shocked when I went in for elbow pain and ended up with B12 shots from the doctor. And I didn't, so because my gut wasn't absorbing, stress affects digestion as well. So I was not able to digest the food, so then I wasn't absorbing the nutrients, and then I became deficient and so low that I had to have injection. So even as a nutritionist and eating a balanced diet and prioritizing my sleep, I was still deficient, and got shocked really at that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So it kind of comes back to something that we talk about quite a lot, about the essentially looking after our guts, keeping them healthy, keeping that balance in our microbiome, and that stress, we don't necessarily take on board how much stress damages the health in our gut, doesn't it? So cortisol has an impact on levels of gut bacteria, as does fluctuating blood sugar. So that's really important. So one of the things that women often find, I don't know, you might find the same, is that they're tired, they're exhausted, they're stressed, but they literally feel like they don't have time to look after themselves because life is really busy. I mean, you've got 4 children. I've got 2 and that feels like enough work. 4 children, you're a busy nutritionist, and you've now got 2 at home, is that right?
Yes, yeah. That's unfortunately due to the COVID. So my youngest was in a bubble where someone had COVID. So the whole school's had to close because it's only a very little school. So they've had to close the whole school. And the senior school, they've sent home 8s and 9s, and I think a lot more since then. So my poor year 10 is still going in every day.
The only one. So life is busy and a bit crazy. So for you, how would you suggest people make that priority? Or what could you prioritize if it feels like you haven't got time? What could be just 1 or 2 key things that you could
well, for me, the thing that makes me feel really happy and feel much better is yoga. So for me, I prioritize yoga. So the gym that I go to, they do early morning sessions. So I'm going tomorrow at 7 a.m. And that is how I prioritize. The gym is open from 6 a.m. till I think 9 or 10 p.m. and I do what I need to do, but I also pick, around what I have to do when I can fit that in. And I try and book the classes ahead of time rather than turn up, because then I've made the commitment, I've set the intention, and I turn up. Because if I don't turn up, I get a black mark on my skin.
Well, there we go. So you've set an intention, you've made a booking, but also there's an incentive to go, because otherwise you get in trouble. Like, you could find it harder to book in the future. So that's a nice way of setting up, and it will make you feel better, even if getting up, the alarm clock going off super early isn't your favorite thing. So perhaps if it was somebody coming to you with fatigue and they were looking for something to prioritize, finding a way of them being able to work out what was there,
what makes them happy, really. It's setting a time aside for what makes you happy. That it's going to help lower those cortisol levels, really. So is that reading a magazine? Is that going out for a walk? Is that meeting up with a friend when you can? It's something that really brings joy, I think, to you in a day.
Oh my goodness, I love that so much. What can you do that brings you joy? That then feels like a really positive way of dealing with it.
You've got to find something each day.
Yeah, I love it. That is amazing. So I don't feel like I've got time to rest. I can't go to bed early. I've got too much to do. I can't have a nap. I eat really well, etc., etc. What gives you joy?
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't have to take.
We know ourselves best, so that question, I think will bring something to mind.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm going to start asking if people do that. And I wanted to talk because I do feel like in the winter, because the impact that stress has on our guts and stress and has on our and on our immune system, what is particularly important when it comes to looking after ourselves, our levels of stress and our levels of fatigue and overwhelm in the winter months. Like, why is it so important, and what can we be doing to support that apart from finding joy?
I think, winter, especially if you live in the north of England, it's just simply like lack of sunshine. Vitamin D is involved in helping to keep the immune system strong and functioning well.
Yeah.
So, the government actually does recommend supplementation of vitamin D throughout winter.
Yeah.
And then for certain vulnerable people, they recommend it all year round. But the problem is, because we've had COVID and we've had lockdown and people have been spending more time indoors, after the summer months, you would expect to be at an optimal level. But because a lot of people have been spending more time indoors, there's already a chance that you are depleted.
Oh, how interesting.
And, just mentioning before about my sore elbow, I went to the doctor for, and actually when I tested my vitamin D level, I was deficient. So low vitamin D levels are linked with fatigue, and it's something that's quite often overlooked. So
yeah.
Just in particular, because of this year and because we've been inside so much more, it's something really worthwhile considering. So I think the problem is, because there's so many people at risk from vitamin D deficiency, you're not going to necessarily be guaranteed to get a test from your GP.
Yeah.
That's worth bearing in mind, that you can't just go to GP and ask. That they'll want to do their own test, and if they think it's relevant, then they will do that. But it's not something that you can just go and ask for regularly.
Right. But you are offering this winter resilience package, aren't you, at the moment, which includes a vitamin D test. So if somebody is concerned about the vitamin D levels, as well as then that's something they could do with you.
Yes, that's right. So I'm offering it's like almost like a mini MOT, really, winter MOT, my winter health resilience package. So it's a chance to fill in a bit of information about what you're eating, so a little bit about diet and lifestyle, and also you'll do a finger prick test at home, which is the vitamin D test, and then you'll get your results back, and then I can go through the results and make kind of simple action plan, really. And if you take vitamin D, it can take kind of 3 months really to see a difference in your levels. So if you wanted to retest, that option is available as well.
I love the idea of having the winter MOT, like of just being able to kind of to check in. So you'd go through somebody's diet and lifestyle and help them work out kind of where it is they might be able to make some changes to support their mental health.
Yeah, I mean, it's like our cars. You put your car in every year for an MOT, but do we do it for ourselves? No, we don't. And I think for ladies, making changes can be really hard when you've got so many other things to deal with, and doing that for yourself. Where do you start?
Yeah.
So,
oh gosh, it's so true. Oh, I know I should do this and I should do that, but I don't even know where to start. So you'd be able to help create a bit of focus. And that's just just do that. It's just one session as well, isn't it?
that is just one off. It's basically that first step. If you want to make a start and you want to do something right now, it's a really good start point. And I'm also I have on my website a freebie which is immune support recipes. So I've just done a smoothie video today and put that on my Facebook page. But it's just something you can download for free, and just, you know, you don't have to follow the plan every day. It's just a case of giving you ideas and seeing what nutrients are in the foods, and giving you some ideas to try. You know, you might mix in a smoothie here or a snack there, and it's kind of just starting to build up your knowledge and make those little changes.
Yeah. So to be able to just, you know, things that you might just add in one or two of them in a week, like rather than going, this is a recipe plan, like a meal plan. It's just the one or two things you could add into this. I love it. Exactly. So you'll share the link with me, won't you? So that I can share it below this video and let other people know. So that sounds like a fantastic resource for all of us for the winter. I should look forward to having a look at that. I think that came to the end of my questions. Oh yeah, that was one last question, which is like, what could we avoid doing? So what are some of the things that we could avoid doing that help? If it can feel really hard to add things in, what is it that we can stop doing?
I think it is hard, you know. Managing stress is the number one thing. So it's, like I say, bringing joy. So trying to avoid stress, but also bringing something with joy to kind of counteract that. Also just thinking about things like breakfast, and you know, avoid just having things like toast and coffee. You need to try and balance your plate and try and have something with protein in the morning. So quite often people have porridge, which is a great winter breakfast, but where's the protein? You know, if you add some nuts and seeds on top of that, you're going to balance your blood sugar. So you know, I think breakfast, I'm really passionate about having a good breakfast, or not even if it's breakfast, but your first meal of the day, whatever time you choose to have that balance, protein, starches, and some fruits or veg. That will really make a difference how you're feeling over the course of the day.
That's a brilliant idea. I think if I've ever had a really disturbed night, I know that if I focus on having a good breakfast, it will really help me get through the day properly. You know, even if that breakfast ends up being at 11 o'clock or something like that, for whatever reason.
And then you know, it's also things like caffeine. I wouldn't ever say don't have your morning coffee because I think I would lose a lot of clients. But if you can think about, if you have you know, coffee later in the day, think about, could I have something else? Could I have a herbal tea? You're kind of after midday, because caffeine can take quite a while to clear, depending on your individual tolerance. So if you could try a decaf coffee or a herbal tea, or, you know, there's lots of lovely drinks, lots of herbal teas. There's one I'm going to try myself, which is like a matcha latte, and it's made with coconut milk. And it, you know, matcha has a little bit of caffeine, but again, it's kind of swapping in little things. So you've already got a habit, you like to have this drink at that time, but try a different drink at that time. Sometimes I make, you know, like a hot chocolate, but it's made with coconut milk, and, you know, I make it you know, not the instant type kind of thing. It's just little changes to add in those things.
I guess it comes down, as you said much earlier on, it's finding the one thing that you can change. So that's really helpful. So, but breakfast and balancing blood sugar sounds like a good place to start. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. So we'll share your links to your winter your winter MOT, your winter immune boost, your winter rescue package, and also to that link to the free immune system busting recipes, which sounds fabulous. And thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. This is Lisa McPherson from Lisa McPherson Nutrition.
Thank you.
Thank you.